Hello and welcome to another Feel at Home. This is Low Manor with myself, Dante.
And myself, Kaz.
Today we're going to be running you through the mean streets of King's Row.
Built by Omnics in the heart of England before the outset of the Omnic Crisis, the cobblestone streets of King's Row are now the centre of human Omnic tensions in the world. With the government refusing to recognise their rights, the Omnics have retreated to their underground city, and difficulties between the two populations increase day by day. The site of Mondatta's assassination at the hands of Talon, the monument that stands in his honour, sits as a marked contrast to the anti-Omnic graffiti that adorns the walls of this once peaceful place. Latest rumours even suggest that some amongst the humans are plotting to utilise an EMP device in an attempt to eliminate the perceived Omnic threat once and for all.
Like many maps, King's Row kicks things off with a very tight choke point that defenders can fortify early on, utilising the open area on their side of the wall to spread out and form a solid defence. The only alternative attacking path for most characters is through the theatre to the right of the London bus. Up the stairs, here you'll find a window that allows you to cut out the main path. This does come with a drawback as the choke point is much tighter and can be easy pickings for a builder or sniper. But the risk is brief and there is cover close by using the stairs to the upper level. Flying characters or a skilled Lucio can take a left-hand path over the wall and past the hotel, but should usually only do so in conjunction with a coordinated push with their team. Once the attacking team has pushed through the primary choke, the area past Mondatta's statue opens up to the point and life can be made very difficult for the defenders by forcing them into their own choke point under the archway.
After point A is captured and the payload released, this will then turn into a negative choke point for the attackers, as they are now funneled through it. Flanking is much easier using the paths under Big Ben, but static defence becomes much harder to use. The payload itself acts as moving cover, and the upper levels that once belonged to the defenders now provide cover for the attacking team. The road ahead can sometimes act as one long choke point, but due to the numerous offshoots that can be used to flank and nullify static defences, we wouldn't consider it as such. This remains true up until the checkpoint itself, which is much easier to defend. The long straight and raised platforms further back in the Omnic City act as prime sniper nests, that we'll cover later, and with only one viable flanking route it can be held easily. Again, vertical characters have an advantage on attack, and can use the higher windows to get behind and disrupt a defensive line, so consider making use of this if you're struggling to break through.
Once the payload hits the checkpoint, the attackers should be on the home stretch. All that lies ahead are two corners and two relatively long straights, but these can be a complete pain to break down on occasion, much like the corresponding final push on Gibraltar. Before each straight, all flanking options disappear and the attackers are forced to push as a unit. The defenders have plenty of space for snipers and static defense to set up, combined with a safe distance with which to work and a relatively narrow field to aim down. Once past each corner, flanking options open up somewhat for the attackers. Easy to spot due to the fact that they're lit up in a cold whitish blue that contrasts with the darker orange of the main route.
Several parts of this map lend themselves to the builder folk of Overwatch, and this starts right out of the gate on point A. The tight choke funnels the attackers down one of two paths, but for the most part you'll be seeing them try to force their way through past the hotel. Take advantage of this by using hard to hit sentry turrets to secure the flanks, with the point itself acting as a great drop back for bastions and tourbillons. Remember to take advantage of the upper platforms too, very few ever expect that.
You will often find a home for a tourbillon turret or bastion here between the wall and the hotel, as being placed to the side of the choke makes it harder for attackers to get a clean shot and allows the turret to cover both the primary choke and the theatre window at the same time. A safer but equally less potent location is to set up towards the rear of the point by the phone box. You have a full view of the choke here but can be vulnerable to offensive snipers and any flanker that gets around under Big Ben. Due to the lack of cover leading to the point, attackers are left with two choices: take a path to either side or barrel forward onto the point.
Traditionally, sentry turrets can be placed on the choke walls to slow anyone passing through, dealing damage and giving your team more time to react. Make sure to spread them out on either side of the choke so they're not all at risk to a single attack. I also like to dot a couple around the theatre window, where they can catch flankers unawares as they try to dash through to your backline. If you get pushed back, setting a nest up in the hotel can lock all but the beefiest tanks out of there, or you can try to protect your snipers or fellow turret builders by defending Big Ben. This tends to be harder though due to the split level.
The road to the first checkpoint has many side streets that diminish the use of turrets and bastions, but that doesn't make them obsolete. The S-bend especially can be a great place to set up due to the small amount of space the attackers have to use. Likewise, coming off the corner is much the same, but the best setup is usually on the T-junction. Just like point A, defenders can set up defense either side to flank attackers. Just be prepared for side street flanks. Coordination with a friendly Mei can mitigate a lot of the risk though, and a bastion or turret above the underground can often be devastating.
The final road is where static defense can really shine, though you'll generally want to drop your Symmetra, as there are very few opportunities to set up a proper nest. You may be able to pull something if you're able to pin back the enemy team with some clever teleporters, but I'll touch on that later.
The best place for your Torbs and Bastions is going to be the sheltered corridors that surround the rear of the final point. You're almost immune to flanks here and have a full view of the whole point. Your only real weakness is to offensive snipers or well-flown Pharahs. Do remember you're not actively contesting the point while doing this, so make sure the attackers don't just slowly edge forward to victory.
A good sniper can define a match, and that's especially true on King's Row. Traditionally there will be a sniper war between an offensive one poking out the top of the church and a defensive one by Big Ben. This is generally a bad scenario for the defender, as should they lose, they have a significantly longer run back at this point. As such, when defending, you may want to move back slightly, utilising instead one of the raised locations behind point A itself. For the attacker, starting off at the top of the church can be followed by swinging down to the theatre balcony once your team has secured it. You're relatively safe here and have a great view of the point, allowing you to pick off any pesky turrets or bastions as needed. Watch out for defensive Pharaohs or Junkrats flinging explosives your way, and remember there's a med pack just under you should you need it.
Once the payload is active, the fallback point for the defensive sniper is on top of the pub roof, giving you a decent fallback position and clear sight of both the archway and the raised window. You're vulnerable to quick flankers to your left, so stick a mine down there to alert you. From here, the points gradually drop back as the payload gets closer to the checkpoint, firstly above the underground station and then the winding path above the checkpoint itself. Occasionally, if the payload stalls around here, think about poking out of the little side doors to the far right. It gives you a very long narrow field to shoot down and a med pack in case of emergencies. Keep an eye out on your right side though. Attacking snipers should generally move along with the payload, keeping a safe distance and protecting from flankers. Only moving forward if there's a bastion or turret to clear out. There are several high positions such as this one, but they're not overly useful.
As we approach the finale, there are two notable raised areas that work well. This first should be adopted just prior to the fall of the final checkpoint, as it gives you a clear field of vision. No flanker should be able to get through without you at least noticing them, and you're only really vulnerable to Pharaohs or other snipers. When this one falls, switch over to the platform at the same height on the other side of the pathway. You're again immune to flankers up here, but the view isn't quite as good. If this point falls, you'll probably want to consider switching off for the last ditch scrap at the end.
King's Row has a long run back for the defenders, so a well-placed teleporter can take the sting out of a team wipe. Point A has several locations to consider teleporter, the most common being immediately after the archway. Unfortunately, because it's the most common, any half-decent flanker will come looking, so consider some alternatives if needed. Putting one above the point itself can be much safer, and if you put one up here you can do a decent job of nesting up around it, though this weakens your front line at the choke if you do this. If you're feeling aggressive, the side rooms in the hotel or under Big Ben can also be used to provide immediate re-engagement, but are much harder to protect if the attackers gain ground.
As the map goes on, Symmetra becomes less relevant for the defenders, and teleporters have fewer and fewer safe places to deploy. There are a couple in small rooms, such as this one, but their survival relies on your team holding the payload well back towards point A. The underground offers one mostly safe location, however, and you can buy your team a few valuable seconds here. Once the checkpoint has fallen through though, we really would recommend switching to someone else.
King's Row has many alternative paths, whether this be side rooms or back alleys. You'll notice these right off the bat with the theatre on the right opening a side path to bypass the choke point. This path can be followed all the way around the point, past the sniper's nest on both the upper and lower paths. The lower leads under Big Ben to a back door to the point, and continues down as a further flanking path towards the first checkpoint. These are prime hunting grounds for Reapers, Tracers and Genjis, and many times they'll be able to pick off healers, snipers and static defense with ease.
Several windows are dotted around point A, and many of the obstructions are only at ground level, allowing anyone with strong vertical movement access to these, making them great escape routes as well as flanks. Due to high starting positions, Lucio can often make use of these too, through clever work of his wall riding ability.
The road to the next checkpoint is winding with several ways through, but let's start off by continuing down the right side on the lower path, transitioning from the bright interior to the darker back alleys. These run down the full length of this section with entries back into the main path to help assist with the payload. Follow this to its conclusion and you'll end up by the entrance to the underground station. All the way along here offers opportunities to catch out defenders that have bedded in, so if flanking is your role, make sure you're utilising this path. On the flip side, you have a raised walkway and room, more suitable for someone like a Junkrat to rain explosives down on the defensive line. But with the door at the end here, if you're both quick and sneaky, you can work your way around behind the defenders and decimate them with an ult.
There's no specific advantage for vertical movement characters along the road from A to the checkpoint, as every raised path can be accessed by any character. Though obviously your Pharah, D.Va, Genji, whatever character can work their way up there a lot quicker. As Dan said, this room can be used by Junkrat both on offense and defense to lob grenades down onto the pathway, and he can do a decent job protecting himself by mining and trapping the paths he won't naturally be covering. Just one quick side note, there is a ledge above the main path that allows Pharah to rest between jumps, allowing her to get around without running the risk of being caught at ground level.
After the checkpoint, flanking routes are at a premium for all bar vertical characters. What ones there are reliant on the attackers pushing past a given point, with the right hand route after the checkpoint functioning as cover for longer range characters to safely poke in and out from. It also allows a relatively safe path to the small room containing the big medkit that can act as a handy stop-off station. After the attackers push past the final corner, a route up to the left opens up, allowing flankers to get up and around and disrupt turret and bastion placement. A particularly aggressive player can get around here and disrupt defenders as they come out of the spawn.
Vertical movers have a bit more joy here via the window up to the left of the gantry, and more importantly the platform with the narrow tunnel and crate that we mentioned earlier as a sniper platform. If you gain control of this, you have power over the point and can harass anyone below you or coming out of spawn. Dan's favourite shortcut of choice, however, is by using the gaps in the floor to sneak round to the point. Pharah, D.Va, Winston and Genji can pull this off, and very few people see it coming. If you've got your ult, you can use this and absolutely annihilate any defenders that aren't paying enough attention. Following a few requests on our last vid, we've been working with the guys at Overwatch Central to bring these into our map videos. Here's a quick overview of all medkit locations, and if you like you can access a high-res version of this in the description below.
Thanks for watching this episode of Feel at Home. If you like this episode, please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more. Next time we'll be running you through the streets and temples of Hanamura. Until then, I've been Dante.
And I've been Kers.
Thanks for watching.